Well, here's a new thing for you all. A video. I'm trying this week to see how it works and see what I can do to make it better if I don't do it so well. This is the 16th of May, 2020. It's actually right now the 13th of May, 2020, but I'm doing this for the 16th of May, 2020. We're looking today at Exodus chapter 19 and verse 6b through 2020. Then we're going to look at Isaiah 61, 1 to 10. We don't have a psalm. And we'll look at Hebrews 12, 18 to 29. Should be relatively short. I've got probably about 12 pages of notes. So here we go. We've been through all the preliminaries already. I'm just going to get right to the Bible study. So here we go. Shemoth chapter 19. Oh, wait a minute. Got to get it up here. E sword X. There it is. And we'd better get to the right passage as well. 19, verse 6b. Where it is written. Oh, by the way, last week, Moshe ended with these words, and ye shall be unto me, Yehovah, ended with these words from Moshe's mouth to the people, said, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. That's 6b. Here we go. I'll start it again. 6b. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moshe came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which Yehovah commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that Yehovah hath spoken we will do. And Moshe returned the words of the people unto Yehovah. And Yehovah said unto Moshe, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with them, and believe thee forever. And Moshe told the words of the people unto Yehovah. And Yehovah said unto Moshe, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day, for the third day Yehovah will come down in the sight of the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves, that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not an hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through. Whether it is beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, thou shalt come up to the mount. Excuse me just a second. Okay, I'm back. And Moshe went down from the mount. I'm sorry, I read too far. No, I didn't. I'm going to read 14 and 15. And Moshe went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day, come not at your wives. Okay, it was the day of the third month's new moon, when Israel arrived at the foot of Mount Horeb. In verse 1, where the King James Version says, in the third month, the Hebrew is B'chodesh Hashlishi, on the third renewal. There is no telling how long Moshe waited until going up to the mount, and how long he stayed before coming down to Israel with Yehovah's instructions. So any precise dating must be inferred. In verse 6b, Yehovah told Moshe in a marked paraphrase, hereinafter, MP, capital M, small p. Okay, if you're reading this, you'll see it. Repeat after me, Moshe. Moshe gathered all the elders of Israel to hear what he had to say, I suppose in case he wouldn't project over the whole people. It appears that all 2.5 million or more of them did hear him, though, because as soon as he was finished speaking, they answered almost in unison, What Yehovah says is what we will do. There's nothing to suggest that any more time was needed for the elders to go to the people and return. They heard everything Moshe said, probably by means of another miraculous sign from Yehovah. Moshe then went to deliver the people's words to Yehovah. Now Moshe did not have to tell Yehovah what the people said, for he already knew. But Moshe was the mediator of this covenant, the mouthpiece between Yehovah and the people, and between the people and Yehovah. As such, it was his job to go to Yehovah and report, and also to receive further instructions by which the people could prove themselves. The Chumash makes the point over and over again that Moshe only went up to the mountain once a day, and always in the morning. That way they can make the giving of the covenant on the timetable that they acknowledge. Many of the Prushim rabbis say the Shavuot is always on 6 Sivan, 50 days after the first day of unleavened bread. Therefore, the date is known before Pesach even begins. And with the intercalated calendar, it's known years in advance, and there is no need to count the Omer. Why count the Omer if you know it's going to be on 6 Sivan? Right? I mean, think about it. Why would you do that? Well, because that's what Yehovah told us to do. He said on the day after the Shabbat, you start counting. Not the day after Pesach, the day after the Shabbat, following Pesach. That's when you're supposed to start. Okay. And that's not the way the Jews do it to this day. They count from Pesach and they count 50 days. Okay, so let's see, where was I? Known years in advance. Okay. Then, take this year, for example. If we were to count the Omer from the 16th of the first month, that is sunset of 15 April, I believe, Shavuot would have been this coming second day, sundown of 17 May, and the day of 18 May. Okay, now, Shavuot, I'm sorry, but the day before is not a Shabbat. Okay, the first day of the week is not the Shabbat. The Shabbat is the seventh day of the week. Okay, so you got to start counting from. Okay, so whatever. And it's the Shabbat of unleavened bread. Okay, so, but the day before is not the Shabbat. Even the lunar calendar Sabbath keepers don't have a Sabbath until Thursday or Friday. Okay, the people that do the lunar Sabbath. Okay, but if you count from the morrow after the weekly Shabbat during Hag HaMatzot, which is what the scripture pretty clearly says to me, the end of your count of weeks ends on a Shabbat, and the next day is day 50, Shavuot or Pentecost. Shavuot or Pentecost always happens on a first day of the week. Okay? It's just how it is. So, anyway, and it's more like the 8th day of the third month, 31 May according to Gregory's calendar. The Gregorian calendar. Okay. Now, beginning in verse 10, Yehovah gave Moshe instructions for the people to follow. Moshe was to sanctify them for the third day following this one, set them apart, and that was to be done by washing their clothes, which might entail a mikveh as well, though that is not said in the passage. Now look at Revelation chapter 7 and verse 14, where it says this, "And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said unto me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes, and have made them white in the blood of the Lamb." Okay? That they had washed their robes shows that they were not the martyrs under the altar, for these have done something for Yehovah since they received their robes. Okay? These people that washed their robes had just done something for Yehovah, had already done something for Yehovah. The people that were under the altar, they were under the altar. They really don't have any robes. And so anyway, Revelation 6:11 says that the martyrs were told to rest, to do nothing. So Numbers chapter 19 and verses 7 through 10, talking about the red heifer, says this, Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he shall come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the even. And he that burneth her shall wash his clothes with water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the even. And a man clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and lay up without the camp in a clean place, and it shall be kept for the congregation, for the children of Israel. I lost my place. Let me go back to it. And the ashes of the red heifer, used in the water of purification, makes them clean, the clean, unclean, until even. Let me read that again, because I got myself lost. Back to the beginning of the paragraph. So clean and set apart men perform a duty for the purification of the people that makes them unclean, so that they have to mikvah and remain clean until the evening offering. And the ashes of the red heifer, used in the water of purification, makes the clean unclean until evening. He puts the stuff, sets the stuff aside, and now he's clean and unclean until even. But the ashes are going to make people clean in the water of the purification. Isn't that a kick in the head? Those who have to wash their robes in Revelation 7 must be doing something in the service of Yehovah and his body. There is no command to mikvah because they're in Mashiach and are clothed by his righteousness. Their physical robes are defiled and need to be cleansed, but they are not. They are in Messiah, and therefore they are washed by his blood. Okay, these are the 144,000 in my view, and I could be wrong, but I doubt it. Now Moshe is also to set apart the mountain that neither the people nor the animals would touch it. The mountain was on a smoke from the presence of Yehovah on its summit. And the associated kavod of Yehovah may have been enough to kill them had they touched the mountain. It's as if Yehovah is making the mountain acceptable for his bride, and he didn't want them coming up and having a surprise spoiled for them. That's interesting. Good thinking, Mark. He told Moshe not to allow any of the people to come near the mountain until they heard the long shofar blast. So Moshe went down the mount and came and told the men Yehovah's word, and to not approach their wives intimately in order to maintain their purity. And I'm open to questions and comments on verses 6b through 15 of chapter 19 of Exodus. If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll be happy to give you the mic. And I'm going to stop this for a minute and get myself placed properly. All right, I'm back. Okay, so we're going to be looking at 16 through 25 now, so here we go. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled. And Moshe brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Yehovah descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moshe spake, and Elohim answered him by a voice. And Yehovah came down upon Mount Sinai, on the top of the mount. And Yehovah called Moshe up to the top of the mount, and Moshe went up. And Yehovah said unto Moshe, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto Yehovah to gaze, and many of them perish. And let the priests also which come near to Yehovah sanctify themselves, lest Yehovah break forth upon them. And Moshe said unto Yehovah, The people cannot come up the Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, Set bounds upon the mount, and sanctify it. And Yehovah said unto him, Away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, thou and Aharon with thee, but let not the priests and the people break through to come up into the mount, lest he break forth upon them. Unto Yehovah, lest he break forth upon them. So Moshe went down unto the people, and spake unto them. And we're open to questions and comments on the rest of the chapter, verses 16 through 25, or anything that you've got from 6b through 25. And I'll be back in a minute. Okay, it was actually about a minute and a half. Okay, so moving on to chapter 20 and verses 1 to 6. And here we go. And Elohim spake all these words, saying, I am Yehovah Elohecha, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other Elohims before me. Thou shalt before me in my face. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image of any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, and that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, Yehovah Elohecha, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of fathers upon the children unto the third and the fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Okay, let's have a look at the notes. Let's see, we're going to look at the opening sentences of the Chumash, the intro to the Ten Commandments, on pages 134, 135. We have a second to get there. Okay, these are pretty lengthy, so bear with me, and you get to watch me read. Okay. When the Holy One, blessed be He, presented the Torah at Sinai, not a bird chirped, not a fowl flew, not an ox lowed, not an angel ascended, not a seraph proclaimed, Kadosh. The sea did not roll, and no creature made a sound. All of the vast universe was silent and mute, and it was then that the voice went forth and proclaimed, I am Hashem, your Elohim. When God revealed himself to Israel, the world fell silent, because this moment was pivotal not only to Israel, but to all the creation. And if Israel, as Yehovah had told Moshe in 19:9, the revelation of Sinai would cause the people to believe in him and in later prophets as well, for they would see and hear that God speaks to men. Okay, and Gur Aryeh says this, explains that God gave all the commandments in a single utterance to symbolize to Israel that the entire Torah is a single, inseparable unit rather than a collection of disparate commandments and statements. Consequently, to contend that one can abrogate even a single word of the Torah is heretical. Rashi explains why it was necessary for God to identify himself as the one who performed the miracles of the Exodus. Since God has no body, and human beings can have no true perception of his essence, our concept of him depends on the circumstances on which he manifests himself. Thus, in Egypt and at the sea, for example, the Israelites saw him as a strong warrior fighting their enemies. At Sinai, they saw him as an elderly, compassionate father who had grieved over their suffering in Egypt. See Rashi according to that. Such apparent dichotomies had led early generations to assume that there were many different gods, a God of mercy, a God of stern justice, a God of fertility, and so on. Therefore, when God revealed himself at Sinai, he informed Israel clearly that there was only one Hashem, and in Egypt, as at the sea, and as at Sinai. Excuse me, let me see if there's more on the other page, on the next page. Nope. Okay. That's the Chumash on this. Now, let's see. Got to find where I was at now. Here we go. How long was the period of silence in rabbinic thought? Revelation 8:1 says, "And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven for the space of half an hour." That's Revelation 8:1. Was Yochanan thinking of Exodus 20 and the rabbinic commentaries? Or was he witnessing the revelation of Torah? He was in the Spirit and not subject to time. Chumash has verse 2 as the first commandment. I don't see a commandment there. Okay? Verse 2 says, "I am Yehovah Elohecha, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage." Okay? I don't see a commandment there. I see the enabling clause that all good law has. The enabling clause declares the lawgiver's bona fides. In the Constitution of the United States of America, it is "we the people of the United States." That's the enabling clause. Okay? In order to perform a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Since Yehovah brought us up out of the land of Egypt and the house of bondage, and because we agreed to obey him, he has the power to make these commandments. The first commandment says, "You shall have no other Elohim before me." Not all Elohim are images. So there is a distinction between the first and second commandments. Anything that we prize above Yehovah in any way and in any time is an Elohim to us. It may be, and often is, our own life. It may be, and often is, music. It may be, and often is, our family. It may be, and often is, our job. It may be, and often is, athletics or fitness. It may be, and often is, sex. Please notice that no one of these things is intrinsically wicked, and in fact are all positive goods in our lives. But when we place these things, ideas, or activities before Yehovah, they are false Elohim. Basically, we are religious creatures, and we are all guilty of idolatry at times. The first commandment deals with the less pronounced and therefore the more dangerous form of idolatry, the secret or subliminal kind that no one else knows about, that no one else sees. The words "before me" are al paneh, in my face. This seems to mean we considered it and went ahead and did it anyway, that we know it's idolatry. The second commandment is not to have graven images of any kind to bow down to. Is a photograph an image? Yes, it is. Do we worship the image? Some do, some don't. If we do, we'd better be considering if we actually are in Mashiach. If we are in Mashiach, Ruach will witness to our idolatry and prompt us to eschew it by destroying the object of false worship and confessing the idolatry to Yehovah. If we are not in Mashiach, there is no Ruach within us to witness to our spirits to run away from the false Elohim. This is the reason for Rav Shaul's admonitions in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 28, and 2 Corinthians 13:5, and in Romans 8:1 through 16. And I'm going to read all of those to you right now. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 28. "But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup." Then 2 Corinthians 13:5. "Examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. Prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves how that Yeshua HaMashiach is in you, except ye be reprobates?" Okay, and then Romans 8 verses 1 through 16. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Mashiach Yeshua, who walk not after the flesh, but after Ruach. For the law of Ruach of life in Mashiach Yeshua hath made me free from the law of sin and death. for what the law could not do, and that it was weak through the flesh. Elohim, sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after Ruach. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, and they that are after the Ruach, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded, life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against Elohim, for it is not subject to the law of Elohim, neither indeed can be. So then, they that are in the flesh cannot please Elohim. But ye are not in the flesh, but in Ruach, if it so be, that the Ruach of Elohim dwell in you. Now if any man hath not Ruach of Mashiach, he is none of his. And if Mashiach be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but Ruach is life because of righteousness. But if the Ruach of him that raised up Yeshua from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Mashiach from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his Ruach that dwelleth in you. Therefore, brethren, be ye debtors, not of the flesh, to live after the flesh. For if ye live after the flesh, ye shall die. But if ye through Ruach do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live. For as many as are led by Ruach of Elohim, they are the sons of Elohim. For ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but ye have received the Ruach of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. Ruach itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of Elohim. Please notice the difference between the law of sin and death in verse 4 and the law of Elohim in verse 7. The law of Elohim is life and peace in verse 6. There are two different laws at work in our bodies, as Paul lamented through Romans 7. Which of these laws we obey is our choice and ours alone. We need to be trained in this truth early, and we ought to train our children in this way so that when they are old, they will not depart from it. Proverbs 22 and verse 6. The reason is that Yehovah does visit the sins of the fathers on the third and the fourth generation of them that hate, despise, or don't consider him. We need to be watching our lives, that they are pleasing to Yehovah. If we truly worship Yehovah, we consider him in everything we do. I'm open to questions and comments on that portion of the scripture, chapter 20, verses 1 through 6. And raise your hand. We'll be happy to give you the mic. Okay, we're back. Verses 7 through 12. Let's go ahead and read them. Thou shalt not take the name of Yehovah Elohecha in vain, for Yehovah will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Shabbat day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor, and do all thy work. But the 7th day, the Shabbat of Yehovah Elohecha, thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger within thy gates. For in 6 days Yehovah made heaven and earth, and the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore Yehovah blessed the 7th day, and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yehovah Elohecha giveth thee. Okay. What does it mean to take the name of Yehovah in vain? Does it mean to use his name, to speak it aloud? Well, no, it doesn't. But yes, it does. I know. Sounds contradictory. But yeah, it does, and no, it doesn't. Just to use his name, to speak, of or about him, or to or about him, is not using it vainly, for that describes a proper use of it. But to use his name so much as to make it common can be a vain use. This is why Yehudism uses Hashem and Christianity uses Lord, capital O, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, to avoid a profane or common usage of the name Yehovah. So far as I have used Yehovah's name 42 times, including that last one, in the 4 pages of notes that I've gone over so far. More than 1.5% of the words I've used has been his name. That's pretty frequent. But not one of those uses has been in any way improper. Every use has been to designate him. Had I used his name improperly in any of those instances, that would have constituted an improper or vain use. But that isn't the only use of Yehovah's name that can be said to be vain. When we are grafted into his kingdom and become a part of his commonwealth, we have been clothed in his name, like a bride is clothed in her husband's name. My lovely bride's maiden name was Deborah Ann Miller, but now her name is Deborah Ann Petrone. Okay? She's not a Miller anymore. Sometimes she may use Miller Petrone, but probably not. She just doesn't do that. Okay, but she could. A lot of people do that. Use both their maiden name and their husband's name, their married name. I don't see the point in that. But anyway, if she does something in my name, see, she is now a part of me, is what the deal is. When we married, she became a part of me. Okay? She became a part of me. Okay? That's the whole idea. We have the two of us have become one. Okay, so she doesn't call herself Deborah Miller anymore, but Deborah Petrone. She represents me in everything she does. So what she does should reflect me, not her. Okay? In exactly that same way, I have taken the name of Yehovah on myself. Everything I do is supposed to reflect him, not me. Okay? What do I do that is not reflecting him? Whatever I may do that does not show him forth is a vain use of his name. Okay? Do we recognize how often we take his name in vain? Do you recognize how many times you take his name in vain? Rather, do we recognize how seldom we actually honor his name in our lives? Okay? It ought to be very sobering to us. In light of how seldom we honor Yehovah's name, do you see why the 5th commandment is one that reflects our relationship with him even more than it does our relationship with our human parents? Okay. In light of the 3rd commandment, look at Philippians chapter 2, verses 4 through 13. I'll go ahead and read them, but if you want to follow along, you can look at them in your Bible. And Patty may put it in the text. Who knows? Anyway, in light of the 3rd commandment, look at Philippians chapter 2, verses 4 through 13. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind, and I'm pointing upwards, okay, to that line right above. Look not every man on his own things, but every man on the things of others. Let that mind be in you, what he just said, as well as what he's about to say. Let that mind be in you, which was also in Mashiach Yeshua, who being in the form of Elohim, thought it not robbery to be equal with Elohim, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the tree. Wherefore Elohim hath also highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name, that at the name of Yeshua every knee should bow, in heaven and in earth and under the earth, and every tongue should confess that, mark edit here, hoti meaning in that or because. Okay, that's what that word that means. In that, Yeshua HaMashiach is Yehovah to the glory of Elohim the Father. Let me read that whole sentence again. That at the name of Yeshua every knee should bow, in heaven and in earth and under the earth, and every tongue should confess that Yeshua HaMashiach is Yehovah to the glory of Elohim the Father. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is Elohim that worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. A secondary application of the third commandment is that there are lots of people who think they will enter the kingdom who will not. Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 7 says this, Everyone that is called by my name, for I have created him for my glory. I have formed him, yea, I have made him. There are those who have taken Yehovah's name on themselves who are not called according to his purpose. They acted presumptuously. They were not formed by Yehovah, but by acts of their own will. That, ultimately, is taking his name in vain. These are probably not the only ways to take his name in vain, but they are the ones that come to my mind pretty readily. The fourth commandment is the one most of us despised, meaning thought vain or useless, until just recently. When it prohibits work, does it mean any type of work? In physics, work means any expenditure of energy toward a desired end. Any expenditure of energy toward a desired end. Okay? So, do I have to lay in bed all day, not even turning my body from one side to the other? Technically, that is work. Or is work already defined for us in chapter 16? Don't do what you normally do to earn a living on Shabbat, which, in chapter 16, was to not go out and gather food or the stuff to prepare it. I think that's the point of the command. We set the Shabbat apart by trusting Yehovah's provision from our 6 days of work and not pursuing that work on the Shabbat. Yeshua and his Talmudim illustrated this by walking by a grain field, gleaning from the corners of the field, rubbing the outer husk off the grain, and eating the grain. They were all from some other occupation than farming. I would suppose that a farmer could go fishing on Shabbat, since these fishermen were gleaning grain on Shabbat. See? The Prushim didn't get that and condemned the Talmudim. Yeshua said they hadn't done anything wrong. So whom do you trust in this case, the Prushim or Yeshua? By the way, there were two different types of Prushim, at least, as we heard from Tzafat last week. Okay, now think of its position between the third and the fifth commandments, and see how they are all speaking of the same honor of Yehovah, which is related in the first two commandments, to not have false Elohim before Yehovah or in his face. The first 5 commandments speak directly to our relationship to Avinu in Mashiach, from the most general, first outline point, I, to the specific, second and through the fifth outline points, A and D. These reflect our love for Avinu, as the second and fifth reflect, as the second 5 reflect our love for our neighbors. Okay, and we'll look at that in just a minute. This is really interesting to me. Okay, that that the first 5 commandments speak directly to our relationship to the Father, Elohim. Okay, even our relationship between ourselves and our parents, our direct relationship, a direct reflection of our relationship with Yahovah. I'm open to questions and comments through verse 12 of chapter 20. And raise your hands and we'll be happy to give you the mic. Okay, we're back. The second greatest commandment, verse 13 through 20. Okay, let's read 13 through 20 first. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And all the people saw the thunderings, and the lightnings, and the noise of the trumpet, and the mountains smoking. And when the people saw, they removed and stood afar off. And they said unto Moshe, Speak thou with us, and we will hear, but let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die. And Moshe said unto the people, Fear not, for Elohim is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before you, or before your faces, that ye sin not. Okay, that's the scripture. Here's the commentary. The second greatest commandment is detailed in the second 5 commandments. The 6th commandment is to do no murder. KJV has kill, but in the day, kill meant murder. To this day, murder is the first entry as a synonym for kill in my thesaurus. So, to take someone's life in a vicious and premeditated fashion is to murder them. And the sentence for one found guilty of murder is death. That manslaughter or premeditated or unpremeditated or inadvertent taking of human life is different from murder is recognized in Torah by the creation of 6 cities of refuge within an easy trip of anywhere in Israel. One who kills another without intent could run there and await investigation of the act that led to the other man's death. In Numbers 35, where the instruction for the cities of refuge is given, the word ratzach, the same one used in the 6th commandment for kill, is translated murderer at least 11 times, and the manslayer 7 to 8 more. Intent is the issue. Even if the manslayer is found not guilty of murder, he must stay in that city of refuge until the day of the then sitting high priest. If I remember correctly, and if Wikipedia is right, and neither is a foregone conclusion, by the way, in the time between the Exodus and the destruction of the temple, a period of 889 years, there were only 17 to 23 high priests, depending on whose list you use. So the average length of a high priesthood is between 38 and 52 years. I think, and I really could be wrong about this, that they trained every son of Aharon from his 20th year to be high priest until his 30th year. Then, when the sitting high priest died, the youngest fully trained person would take the office. Even at that, a high priest dying early would live to between 70 and 80 years before he croaked. A manslayer would have to stay in the city of refuge for quite some time to avoid the avenger of blood. He should have been more careful of those around him, eh? And this has got to be going through the minds of the Israelites all the time. Okay. The 7th commandment is no adultery. A married person is not to lie with a person other than his or her spouse. Period. Adultery is likened throughout Scripture to idolatry, going after strange Elohim. No other Elohim, no other sexual partners. Commandment 7 is to interpersonal relationships what Commandments 1 to 5 are to our relationship to Mashiach. Enough said. The 8th commandment is no theft. This one corresponds to the fourth commandment, because when we perform our regular work on Shabbat, we are effectively trying to steal time from Yehovah for the purpose of providing more for ourselves, thereby not trusting him to do what he's promised. There are exceptions to this rule, like life-saving or life-sustaining work, doctors, nurses, and such preserving life. But these are exceptions to preserve a life. So a surgeon should not be scheduling surgery on a Shabbat, though emergencies do happen. In an emergency, he should do what he can do. Makes sense. Now, life comes before everything, even these commandments. Okay, if you can save a life and you got to break one of these commandments, go ahead and do it. Save the life. That's more important. Okay, that was the 8th commandment. 9th commandment is to not bear false witness, which directly correlates to the 3rd commandment, not taking his name in vain. When we take his name upon us and then act as if we were free agents and his name is really no importance, we have borne false witness and taken his name in vain. Okay? The 10th commandment is to not covet. This one can get really involved, but there are basically 2 ways that we can covet. We can covet what others have, like wealth, power, or influence, or we can covet what we already own and don't want to live without, like wealth, power, or influence. Doesn't always have to be wealth, power, or influence, by the way. It's just that that's what came to mind. When Yeshua dealt with the rich young ruler, and I believe that was Saul of Tarsus, he was Gamaliel's Talmudim, chief Talmudim at that time. Talmud, rather. This was the key to the passage. In Mark chapter 10, we see this, verses 17 through 22. And when he was gone forth into the way, there came one running, and kneeled to him, and asked him, Good master, what shall I do that I may inherit eternal life? And Yeshua said unto him, Why callest thou me good? None good but one, Elohim. Thou knowest the commandments. Do not commit adultery. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Defraud not. Honor your father and your mother. And he answered and said unto him, Master, all these I have observed from my youth. Then Yeshua, beholding him in full, okay? This man was not lying. He had kept all of these since his youth. Okay? Yeshua, beholding him, loved him, and said unto him, One thing thou lackest. Go thy way, sell whatever thou hast, and come, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven. And then come, take up your cross, and follow me. And he was sad at that, and went away grieved, for he had great possessions. Yeshua left out, do not covet, because he knew this guy's problem was lust for what he had. Okay? Same as Rav Shaul in Romans chapter 7, when he said this, What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Elohim forbid. Nay, I had not known sin, but by the law. For I had not known lust, except the law had said, Thou shalt not covet. It truly was hard for Shaul to kick against the pricks. His covetousness of his position in Judaism was, I think, the real thorn in the flesh that he requested be removed from him. In 2 Corinthians 7. And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Hasatan, to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. The thorn in Paul's flesh was not a physical problem like nearsightedness. It was spiritual and threatened his relationship with Mashiach every day. He dealt with it all his life. In Romans chapter 7, verse 24, O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? Mashiach will. Rav Shaul, Mashiach will. That's his job. And he's very good at it. I think the 10th commandment is the catch-all, because it is the root cause to all of the others. It is covetousness that is the root of our idolatry, because our most pernicious idol is ourselves. We think Hasatan is wicked because he wants to be like El Shaddai, but we are every bit as guilty as he. If we didn't think of ourselves as the most precious thing in creation, we wouldn't be tempted to get what isn't ours by right, which really amounts to nothing. We have nothing by right, not even the breath we're taking right now. Okay? It is ours as a gift from El Shaddai, Yehovah. The gift is not anything for us to covet, and if it is taken back, we need to glorify Elohim for having had it for as long as we did. And I'm open to questions and comments on the Torah portion, all of it. Questions or comments on Genesis, or Exodus, chapter 19 and verse 6b through Exodus chapter 20 and verse 20. Raise your hand. We'll be happy to give you the mic. Okay, moving to the Haftarah. YeshaYahu chapter 61 and verses 1 to 4. 4 verses. Got a pretty good chunk on here. The spirit of Adonai Elohim Yehovah is upon me, because Yehovah hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of prison to the bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yehovah, and the day of vengeance of Eloheinu, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Sion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of Yehovah, that he might be glorified. And they shall build the old wastes, they shall raise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many generations. Isaiah 61 is Mashiach speaking. The word translated anointed is Hebrew 4886 Mashach. If we add the right hand of Yehovah as the middle syllable, the letter Yud, we speak Mashiach. Verse 1 names 5 different ways Mashiach delivers. He preaches good tidings to the meek. He binds up the brokenhearted. He gives sight to the blind. He proclaims liberty, Torah, to the captives. He opens the prison of the bound by proclaiming the acceptable year of Yehovah. All these are spiritual conditions, and the remedies are done in spiritual metaphor by Mashiach, Yeshua, when he visited us. When he performed his miracles, he was usually fulfilling one of these prophecies of Mashiach. I think the reason the third condition he met was removed from the Masoretic text was to remove the thing that is unmistakably something that only Mashiach could do. Give sight to those who were born blind. In John chapter 9, we see this. Verse 16. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of Elohim, because he keepeth not the Shabbat day. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. They say unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him, that he hath opened thine eyes? And he said, He is a prophet. Okay, with that the Prushim are divided. Verse 24. Then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, Give Elohim the praise, we know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. The Jews, the Uaidoi, i.e. the spiritual leaders of the religion, said, in verse 29, We know that Elohim spake unto Moshe, As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, here's a mark at it, and the uneducated blind man taught the Jews, the Uidoi. This, by the way, Pharisees, Sadducees, according to our friend Safat, there were at least two branches of each order of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. There were those who were true to the Torah. There were those who were true to themselves, basically. It's that simple. At least that's the way that I read it. So, the man answered and said unto them, Why, herein is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened mine eyes. Now we know that Elohim heareth not sinners, but if a man be a worshipper of Elohim, and doeth his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of Elohim, he could do nothing. Wow. This uneducated, formerly blind man just woke him up. Talk about cut to the quick. Have you ever seen a pro wrestling match and what they call a pile driver? That's what this guy just did to the Uidoi, the political leaders of the Hebrew religion. This phrase is Isaiah 61:1, recovery of sight to the blind, had to go, or their political positions would wither up and die. This was an unmistakable work of Yehovah and his Mashiach. In verse 2 of YeshaYahu chapter 61, contains a gap of roughly 2,000 years. Yeshua, got a little itch. Yeshua proclaimed the acceptable year of Yehovah, but not the day of vengeance of Elohim. It is likely that the Uidoi leaders of the religion accepted him as Mashiach ben Yosef. The day of Elohim's vengeance would have come immediately, had they accepted him as Mashiach ben Yosef. The day of Elohim's vengeance would have come immediately following his resurrection as Mashiach ben David. What would the proclamation of the day of vengeance have done? We're told in verses 2c to the end of the chapter what it will do. So I assume it would have been done had there been acceptance then. It will, number 1, comfort all who mourn, and appoint unto us, number 2, beauty for our dust and ashes. 3, the oil of joy for our mourning. 4, a garment of praise for our heavy spirits, so that we might be called. 5, Ele Hatzadik, elms of righteousness. And 6, a planting in which Yehovah glories. I say, we and us, because we will go through the time of great heaviness and mourning before we overcome through to Yehovah's messianic kingdom. Keep that in mind when the persecution comes. Endure it until the end of either your life or the time of Yaakov's trouble, and you shall be an overcomer and a part of his bride. Those who overcome shall build the old wastes, raise up the old desolations, repair the waste cities and the desolations of many generations. Do you see why the people at the synagogue in Nazareth got angry when he quit in the middle of verse 2? They wanted all the good stuff without any of the bad stuff, and the delivery of the physical now, not the spiritual. They wanted what they could see with their eyes and touch with their hands, not just what they would merely know in their hearts and minds. And I'm open to questions and comments on verses 1 through 4 of Isaiah chapter 61. Have a question or a comment, raise your hand. We'll be happy to give up the mic. Okay, verse 5 through 11. Isaiah chapter 61, verses 5 through 11. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the alien shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers. But ye shall be named the priests of Yehovah, shall call you the ministers of our Elohim, of Eloheinu. We shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall ye boast yourselves. For your shame shall not have double. I'm sorry. For your shame ye shall have double, and for confusion they shall rejoice in their portion. Therefore in their land they shall possess the double. Everlasting joy shall be unto them. For I, Yehovah, love judgment. I hate robbery for burnt offering. I will direct their work in truth, and will make an everlasting covenant with them. And their seed shall be known among the Gentile, and their offspring among the people. All that see them shall acknowledge them, that they are the seed Yehovah hath blessed. I will greatly rejoice in Yehovah. My soul shall be joyful in my Elohim. For he hath clothed me with the garments of salvation. He hath covered me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decketh himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth with her jewels. For as the earth bringeth forth her bud, and as the garden causeth things that are sown in it to spring forth, so Adonai Yehovah will cause righteousness and praise to spring forth before all the nations. Okay. Verses 5 through 11 follows my notes from this section from last week. Okay, 66, 6 through 10. Yehovah is going to find a way to make us priests and ministers for his kingdom. In Ezekiel 40 through 48, the sons of Tzadok are the ones who offer the freewill offerings while the Levites serve in the temple. Speculation warning. Maybe the resurrected saints will be the sons of Tzadok in the kingdom. In verse 5, we see the stranger. By the way, the speculation warning goes on for quite some time. So this is all speculation, what I'm doing now. In verse 5, we see the stranger. That is Hebrew 21:14, Tzur, one who turns aside to lodge, feeding our flocks and the alien. Okay, we see the stranger feeding our flocks and the alien. That is the Hebrew Nekar 52:36, which means foreigner. Okay? Okay, so we'll see the stranger feeding our flocks, plowing our fields, and dressing our vines. Perhaps to free us to perform Yehovah's service in verse 6. When it says we will eat the riches of the Gentiles, I don't think it has the aspect of oppression, but that they will, at least in part, at first, gladly make their offerings to Yehovah, which we, as his reconciled kingdom of priests, and the Levites will eat. If true, we will be in our resurrected bodies in the kingdom. We will not have wrong motives in accepting the offerings of the Tzur or the Nekar. But since they, aliens, are in their fallen physical bodies, they may perceive it as oppression. And you can bet your bottom dollar that after Hasatan is released from his chains during the last few months or year of the kingdom, he will be playing the oppression card to the hilt. It will probably be one tool he will use to foment the final Gog Umagog rebellion. In verse 7, the kings will receive double for the trouble endured in their fallen flesh. It says in 2 Chronicles 31:10, and Azaryahu, the chief priest of the house of Tzadok, answered him and said, since the people began to bring the offerings into the house of Yehovah, we have had enough to eat and have left plenty. For Yehovah hath blessed his people, and that Yehovah hath blessed his people, and that which is left is this great store. Verse 8 of our passage shows what I mean by them not being oppressive, like Azaryahu, the son of Tzadok, explained to Hezekiah in 2 Chronicles 31:10. For Yehovah hates robbery for burnt offering. Tzadok equals Tzadik, and Mashiach is our Tzadik. The priests, at the end of both the Judges and the Yehuda's kingdom time, were being oppressive in their exactions of offerings, or for offerings. In 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verses 27 through 35, I've got this. And there came a man of Elohim unto Eli, and said unto him, Thus saith Yehovah, Did I plainly appear unto the house of thy father, when they were in Egypt in Paro's house? And did I choose him out of all the tribe of Israel, my priest, to offer upon mine altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod before me? And did I give unto the house of thy father all the offerings made by fire of the children of Israel? Wherefore kick ye at my sacrifice and mine offering, which I have commanded habitation, and honorest thy sons above me, to make yourselves fat with the chiefest of all the offerings of Israel my people? Wherefore Yehovah Elohim of Israel saith, I said, Indeed thy house and the house of thy father should walk before me forever. But now Yehovah saith, Be it far from me. For them that honor me I will honor, and they that despise me shall be lightly esteemed. Behold, the days come, that I will cut off thine arm, and the arm of thy father's house, that there shall not be an old man in thine house, and thou shalt see an enemy's habitation, in all which shall give Israel, and there shall not be an old man in thine house forever. And the man of thine I shall not cut off from mine altar, to consume thine eyes, and to grieve thine heart, and all the increase of thine house shall die in the flower of their age. And this a sign unto thee, that shall come upon thy two sons, to Hophni and Pinchas. In one day they shall both die. They shall die both of them. And I will raise me up a faithful priest, shall do according to which mine heart, and in mine heart, and in mine mind. And I shall build up him a sure house, and he shall walk before my Mashiach forever. Tzadok was a faithful Aharonic priest. Oppression will not happen with us in the Messianic kingdom, as the sons of Tzadok will officiate. Since the priest will not be taking more than Yehovah requires, as some Aharonic priests did in the flesh, the people will have more of their own than they did under the priesthood of the earthly kingdom. The priests of the millennial Messianic kingdom will be righteous judges and accept from the people only what is due Yehovah for the people's freewill offerings. And in verse 9, the people will recognize the righteousness of the priests, the sons of Tzadok, who serve before Mashiach and execute his judgments, commandments, ordinances, and statutes. I think that verse 10 ices the speculation that the priests are resurrected saints. These priests are clothed in garments of salvation, covered with robes of righteousness, as a bridegroom decks his bride with ornaments, and as the bride gives her dowry of precious gems to her husband, as we will cast our crowns at Mashiach's feet. And I'm open to questions and comments on the Torah and the Haftarah. And we have no psalm, so we'll be going directly to Hebrews chapter 12 when we come back. Raise your hand. We'll be happy to give you the mic. Where am I? Here I am. Okay, we're here for our last segment. This is Hebrews chapter 12, verses 18 to 29. And we'll go ahead and read that. Here we go. For ye are not come unto the mount that might be touched, and that burneth with fire, nor unto blackness, and darkness, and tempest, and the sound of the trumpet, and the voice of words, which voice they that heard entreated that the word should not be spoken to them any more. For they could not endure that which was commanded, and if so much as a beast touch the mountain, it shall be stoned and thrust through with a dart. And so terrible was the sight, Moshe said, I exceedingly fear and quake. But ye are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the innumerable company of the living Elohim, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly of the church of the firstborn which are written in heaven, and to Elohim the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, and to Yeshua the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than of Abel. See that ye refuse not him that speaketh, for if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall we not escape if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven, whose voice then shook the earth, that now he hath promised, saying, Yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And this word, yet once more, signifieth the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that are made, and those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, we, receiving a kingdom which cannot be removed, let us have grace, whereby we may serve Elohim acceptably with reverence and godly fear, for our Elohim is a consuming fire. And here is what I have to say about all of that. So this is the be-all and end-all. I'm kidding. Remember our Torah passage, where Moshe was told to ensure that no one came to even just touch the mount, for they would be snuffed out. Well, the mount we come to is not that mount that Yehovah says we can't touch. Actually, I don't think it was the mountain that was the problem, but the people who would be unworthy to touch it while Yehovah was on its peak, because Yehovah knew their hearts, that they were no more worthy of touching such hallowed ground than we are in our own right. The difference between them and us is not our human hearts, but our trust in Yehovah and his Mashiach. The people at the feet of Sinai proved their unworthiness to touch the mount by being unable to endure even the trump of Yehovah, much less his voice. The beast system will offer us the Esav test. They will offer to feed you in exchange for your willing obedience and the sale of your birthright. Only after you've chosen not to sell your birthright will you come to the Mount Zion and the Kahal of the Bachor. We come to the Mount Zion and the New Jerusalem, the city of the Elohim HaChaim, with an innumerable company of angels, so many saints of El Shaddai that they can't be counted. Let me read you that sentence again. We come to the Mount Zion and the New Jerusalem, the city of Elohim HaChaim, which with an innumerable company of angels, so many saints of El Shaddai that they can't be counted. This gathering of saints, messengers of Yehovah, is called the Kahal of the firstborn, Ephraimites. Remember, Ephraim is Yaakov's Bachor. Yeah, Genesis chapter 48, I believe. Might be 49. Anyway, verse 24 speaks of the difference between Yeshua's and Abel's blood. Abel's very blood cried out, and he, that is Yehovah, said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. If Cain could not escape when he turned away from his brother's blood that he'd poured out on the ground, and that was crying out for vengeance, how will we escape if we turn away from the blood poured out before Yehovah in the heavenly sanctuary that is crying out for our forgiveness? Remember, always remember, that the book of Hebrews was written to a group of priests, Jewish priests, who were believers in Mashiach, who were thinking of going back to the Yom Kippur sacrificial service. The whole book is dealing with this issue. In chapter 10, they were told that there is no more sacrifice for sins. Yom Kippur language is used throughout chapter 10. He has not come to the icing on the cake. Okay, he has sorry, he has now come. Let me go back. In chapter 10, they were told that there is no more sacrifice for sins. Yom Kippur language is used throughout chapter 10. He has now come to the icing on the cake. Yeshua's blood is asking for our forgiveness. And if we turn our backs on it, as Cain had callously done to Abel's blood, that was crying out for vengeance, what chance will we have of inheriting the life supplied by it? He that speaks in 25 through 27 is Yeshua, who spoke from Sinai as the earth quaked and the mount was on a smoke, with thunder and lightning. Now when he speaks, it will shake not just the earth, but the very heavens as well. This sounds like 2 Peter chapter 3 and verses 7 through 12, where it is written, "Let the heavens and the earth which are now by the same word are kept in store. May the heavens and earth which are now by the same word kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with Yehovah as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day." By the way, that means that time is irrelevant to Yehovah. Yehovah is not slack. Yehovah is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of Yehovah will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with a fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Then all these things shall be dissolved. Then all these things shall be dissolved. What manner ought ye to be in holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of Elohim, wherein the heavens, being on fire, shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Verses 26 to 29 speak of the destruction of the heavens and the earth, and the creation of new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness, and a kingdom that cannot be moved, because Elohim, Yehovah, will live there among his people. I think the author of Hebrews had a glimpse of the end of the Messianic kingdom era and of the new creation. Now, personal opinion, I could be wrong, but I doubt it. And that's the end of our Shabbat Bible study. Questions or comments on all of that? Raise your hand. I'll be happy to give up the mic.